You have held this object in your hands hundreds of times, only to toss it into the trash without a second thought. It is tucked inside the pocket of your new leather jacket, resting at the bottom of a shoebox, or rattling around inside a bottle of vitamins. It is a tiny, unassuming paper pouch filled with hard little beads and a stern two-word warning printed on the front: do not eat. Most of us treat these packets like packing peanuts or plastic wrap, just another piece of industrial waste that stands between us and the thing we actually bought. We see them as a nuisance, a bit of clutter that seemingly serves no purpose once the box is opened. But that little bag is actually a masterpiece of engineering that has traveled from elite chemistry labs to the brutal trenches of global warfare before finally ending up in your closet. It is a silent guardian that has protected everything from life-saving medicine to high-tech weaponry. And its story is far more complex than the simple warning on the outside suggests. The first thing you have to realize is that the name of this material is a complete lie. We call it silica gel, but if you were to break open one of those packets, you wouldn't find a gel at all. You would find hard, glassy beads that look more like tiny crystals or plastic pellets. In our daily lives, we associate the word gel with things that are soft, squishy, or liquid adjacent, like hair products or gelatin desserts. This material is the exact opposite. It is a solid form of silicon dioxide, which is the same basic chemical compound that makes up common sand and quartz. However, while the sand on a beach is dense and solid all the way through, these beads are anything but. They have been processed into a state that is almost impossibly airy. If you could zoom in far enough, past what the human eye can perceive, you wouldn't see a solid rock. You would see a labyrinth. This internal architecture is the secret to its power. Every single bead is riddled with millions of microscopic pores, creating a massive network of tunnels and caverns. To give you an idea of the scale we are talking about, a single gram of this material, roughly the amount in one of those small packets, has an internal surface area of about 800 square meters. That means the inside of a tiny pouch you find in a shoebox actually has more surface area than 2 full-size tennis courts. This massive hidden landscape is what allows the material to perform its primary job, which is often misunderstood. Most people assume these beads act like a sponge, soaking up water and holding it inside, like a wet rag, but that isn't quite right. A sponge performs absorption, where the liquid permeates the entire body of the material. What happens inside that little packet is called adsorption, with a D, instead of the water soaking into the bead. The water molecules from the air literally stick to the surface of those millions of tiny internal tunnels. It is a physical bond where the moisture is trapped and held tight by the sheer vastness of the internal area. This is why the packet always feels bone-dry to the touch, even when it is working at maximum capacity. It is pulling invisible water vapor out of the air and locking it away in a microscopic vault. And it does all of this without any moving parts, batteries, or chemical reactions. It is pure geometry working in your favor. But this clever bit of science didn't start as a way to keep your new sneakers smelling fresh. It was forged in a much darker chapter of history. While various forms of silica were known to chemists in the 1800s, the version we use today was patented by Walter A. Patrick, a chemistry professor at Johns Hopkins University, right around the end of World War I. At the time, the world was looking for better ways to deal with the horrors of chemical warfare. The gas masks used in the trenches needed a material that could effectively filter out various toxins and handle the extreme humidity of a damp, muddy battlefield. Silica gel proved to be a reliable soldier. It was used in the canisters of gas masks to keep the air breathable and stable. However, it was during World War II that its importance truly skyrocketed. Imagine trying to ship delicate equipment across the ocean to the humid tropical climates of the Pacific Theater. Without protection, the moisture in the air would ruin everything before it even arrived. High-tech radio sets would corrode, ammunition would degrade, and perhaps most importantly, medicine would spoil. During the war, silica gel was the primary reason that penicillin, a brand new miracle drug at the time, could be transported to the front lines without losing its potency. It was a vital link in the supply chain that saved countless lives. When you find one of those packets in a box of electronics today, you are looking at a direct descendant of a wartime technology that once protected the most advanced military hardware on the planet. After the wars ended, the manufacturing industry realized that the enemy wasn't just on a battlefield, it was everywhere. Moisture is the slow, silent destroyer of almost everything we value. It's what allows mold to grow on your clothes. It's what causes the metal contacts in your smartphone to corrode. And it's what makes the pages of old books turn yellow and brittle. By placing a small, cheap packet of silica gel in a product's packaging, companies could ensure that their goods survived the journey from a factory halfway across the world to your front door. It became the universal insurance policy for the global economy. Of course, the most famous thing about these packets isn't what they do, but the warning they carry. The "Do Not Eat" label has led many people to believe that silica gel is a deadly poison, but that is another common misconception. In its pure form, the material is chemically inert and non-toxic. If a dog or a child were to swallow a few beads, they would likely pass through the system without causing any chemical harm. The warning exists mainly because the packets are a choking hazard, and because some industrial versions contain a moisture indicator called cobalt chloride, which can be harmful. But for the most part, the label is there to tell you that this is a tool, not food. The real tragedy of these packets is how quickly we discard them. We have been conditioned to think of them as single-use items, but they are actually almost immortal. When a silica gel packet has filled up with moisture, it doesn't die, it just goes dormant. You can actually recharge them by placing them in an oven at a very low temperature around 200 degrees Fahrenheit for an hour or two. This gently drives the trapped water molecules out of the internal tunnels and back into the air, leaving the beads ready to work all over again. Instead of throwing them away, you can collect them and put them to work in your own home. You can drop a few into your gym bag to prevent that lingering locker room smell, or place them in a toolbox to keep your wrenches from rusting. If you have a collection of old family photos or important paper documents, a few of these packets in the storage bin can prevent the air from warping and staining the paper over the decades. Some people even keep them in their car's glove box to help keep the windshield from fogging up on humid mornings. They are tiny, silent dehumidifiers that require no power, and yet we treat them like garbage. It is a strange quirk of the modern world that we are surrounded by such incredible feats of science and history, yet we rarely notice them. We live in a time where a material designed for the survival of soldiers and the preservation of miracle drugs is now so common that we consider it a nuisance. The next time you open a box and find one of those little white pouches, don't just toss it aside. Take a second to look at it and realize that you are holding a piece of engineering that conquered the elements and changed the way we move goods around the globe. It is a reminder that even the smallest, most ignored objects in our lives often have the biggest stories to tell. If this changed the way you see something as simple as a packing insert, subscribe to Amazing Simple Things. Because the most ordinary objects in your world often have the most extraordinary histories hiding right beneath the surface.